Hello and welcome to the podcast. And I'm here on my quest to learn everything you want to know about game dev. And now I'm very lucky to have Paul West from Fumb Games join us. Paul, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Oscar, for having me. So my name is Paul West, as you said. I'm the founder of Fumb Games. We make mobile idle games, soon to be making some casual games. And we are almost 10 years old as a studio. We're about 20 people based in the UK. And my background is very much mobile games heavy. I joined the games industry in around 2011 at a studio called Neon Play based in Cirencester. The first week we were Apple's 10 billion download from the App Store. So that was like the most exciting thing that could ever happen. And it's been a roller coaster ever since, and an upwards trend of one, I should say, which is good. And I also joined Ad Colony in the early days when rewarded video became a thing and started blowing up. So I've had a really lucky career so far, being on content side, being on ad tech side, and a couple of things in between as well.
Yeah, and you're glad you reminded me about Neon Play. I forgot all about that, so I didn't realize I'd known you that long. Anyway, moving swiftly on. So one of the things I thought I'd explore, because with us looking at the kind of economy of the game, one of the things that has really transitioned mobile and probably made it the powerhouse of the games industry, I would argue, is the rewarded ad. And obviously we were both there watching the impact that the growth of rewarded ads had on player behavior, game behavior, design, monetization, engagement, and the kinds of games that it unlocked. I'd be really interested to kind of get your perspective on what is it about a rewarded ad, which back in that day, back in the 2016s of this period, what was it that, did you notice? I mean, am I making sense? Did you notice something special about what people were doing with rewarded ads?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I first encountered rewarded ads back in Neon Play days. So like 20, I think when Flurry Circle was like one of the first ones I remember testing. If you remember Flurry back in the day, showing my age. And that worked phenomenally well. For us, incredible. We took it on as a test at Neon Play and it just instantly was successful, like significant revenue. And then at the time, for like a small indie studio, there was like paid games and light games that upsold to paid games. I'm sure you'll remember. So I remember dropping it into a light, like I think it was like Flick Football Lite, one of our big games.
Oh yes,
and that went from turned an app from a promotional tool to try and upsell to paid to making more money than the paid product.
Yeah.
And then since then, it's obviously been evolved and developed upon, and economies have been built around rewarded ads monetization and those kind of things. So yeah, I definitely agree with you and I've seen the evolution of this product as a feature. And it's been super exciting. 2016 was, if I'm right, and I'm trying to remember here, Future Play was like the first company that I was aware of that kind of went, we're fully going rewarded video. Maybe it was like 2017, 2018 time where they came about. And at Ad Colony, at the time, we were like, this is really interesting because they're building their entire business on our product. And then obviously that's before hypercasual, before everything else really, really came to life.
Well, I remember the Hipster Well guys doing Crossy Road. So one of my favorite talks. So back in, I think 2014 at Casual Connect, I got to talk to Matt Hull, who was one of the lead guys down there. And he'd come from all the way from Australia to Amsterdam to do a talk. The fascination that we both had about the use of rewarded ad and its placement as a means to encourage people to play more, not just in its means to monetize, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they really hit something quite early, didn't they? I think they had invest in the game session you're about to have. So, watch an ad for a specific boost. I know Rovio did that quite early as well. And then the Crossy Road one, of course, had I'm pretty sure the placement was, you've just failed the level. Would you like to continue?
I think there was definitely that. But it was also, I think, I can't remember the full details, but we talked about a whole bunch of related things. Something, because I remember one of the things about Crossy Road is that they had PewDiePie before he became a more complicated character. They had his dog in it. And I think there was some things like you could unlock certain rewards through watching an ad as well. So there's some interesting mechanics that were being experimented with back in the day.
Yeah, yeah, and it just grew from there, really. I mean, that
Mm.
Prosy Rate, I remember they were a publisher of Unity ads, I'm sure back in the day,
Yeah,
but also with Ad Colony, and the volume
yeah,
that they would produce was incredible. That was where the new
yeah,
slogan kind of came out from our brand sales team, which was like the new prime time, because
yeah,
publishers
yeah,
like
yeah.
that were bigger than the Super Bowl eyeball collection. Like it was crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about Crush because they were the first ones for us as Unity ads that got 3 million in 3 weeks in revenue just from ads. I mean, I'm sure there are games out there still making more money than that now, but for us, that was like that's where we, like you say, prime time suddenly became a thing. It became massively kind of influential. And what I found really fascinating about it, I imagine you had similar experiences when you talked to players and you said to them, do they want ads? The universal response was no. When you said to them, do you want rewarded ads? They said, absolutely, yes, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. And you even see today, like when we fast forward to now, studios are offering two types of remove ads. It's like remove the pop-up ads and remove the rewarded ads, and there's
Yeah,
different values for each, right?
yeah.
Because people love, like, I'm speaking in a generalization here, but the majority of players do love rewarded ads.
Mm.
Um,
We'll get into that because I with the more recent changes to the formats we've seen, particularly with right now, they're playing longer than 30-second ads. They're then forcing some platforms are forcing a playable that's a
yep.
minimum of 30 seconds after that. And then on top of that, you're forcing another 30 seconds on the store page, well, the link to the store page. Well, we'll get there. But these kind of like changing behaviors, I think, are not necessarily helping the monetization function. But let's go back to the history. So, I mean, I think, for you, I don't know. For me, we had a long period of time getting people to understand that putting an ad into a game could be something that wasn't just terrible. And whether it was something like, I'm thinking about Dumb Ways to Die, where they used a lot of, not rewarded ads, but they used a lot of interstitial ads. But they were clever about where they placed the interstitial ads. So you only saw the ad on the menu on the way to return to the main menu. You could play and you could play and you could play. It was only at the end you saw that interstitial ad. So, and even then, they were always skippable. Did you see? I mean, obviously, we talked about reward ads being clever. Some use of interstitials could be clever. Did you see some interesting techniques in the time about how people were trying to use ads?
Yeah, I mean, it was much simpler times, I think.
Yeah,
Back then, rewarded video meant 30-second video or less, normally between 15 to 30 second, and a call to action at the end,
mm,
which was literally just normally screenshots, the name, some reviews, and an install button. And that was it. That was,
that was it.
very simple for the player, very simple for the publisher. And then all the kind of evolution was happening around the models, the bidding mechanics,
Yeah,
cost per click, cost per install, and all things
yeah,
behind the scenes that weren't player facing. And interstitials were skippable after 3 seconds, and
yeah,
they never lasted more than 3 seconds. And obviously we're going to talk about that, but it's moved on much more since then. What we found at Colony was typically you'd start off with a very simple integration, almost like an afterthought,
yeah,
right? Because these games have
yeah.
been built and then it would be
Absolutely.
bolted on. And then it was a case of there was a couple of years of evolution where people went, actually, this is becoming a double-digit percentage of my revenue or
Mm,
more. And games started to be built around that as the core monetization
yeah,
rather than just a bolt on the side. I
absolutely.
mean, I remember at the Ad Colony conversation with Rovio at the time, and the lead at the time was like, we'll never do rewarded ads. We'll never do ads in our games. And now even a few years later, you look at
Yeah.
Rovio's like earnings sheets, it's like
Mm.
primarily rewarded.
Well, it was interesting for us because I think where we got established and why I think Unity bought Amplifier was because we had good relationships with King and Supercell, and they were using those ads a lot, but they
Mm,
weren't putting them in the games at
yeah.
the time. They were using them to acquire users. They were essentially giving huge amounts of money away to the rest of the industry, arguably.
Yeah. But
And
I think the fear, I remember the fear, and it even comes up now in other forms with other like channels now, I should say, new emerging channels. But the conversation was constantly, why would I give my players away? I've worked so hard to
yeah,
get them, which is a very valid concern. But
mm,
what we proved, all the rewarded
yeah,
video
all of
networks,
us did. Yeah,
Bongo and everyone else proved, like, your game has to be good enough to bring the player back because they could leave
yeah.
for any reason. And also, if they are going to leave, at least you can monetize them on the way out.
Yes, and
So,
they're probably going to leave anyway. So I think you found the same thing. I can't remember back in the day. I think we all had little reports that were very similar, where we did evidence-based responses, where we like, this is the proportion of people that you would have lost without the ads. It's the same proportion of people you lost with the ads. Only you got paid.
exactly. I remember you guys had some great great kind of promo materials. I think we even like you referenced, which was I think you did something seriously in Best Fiends, which was like extend your session lengths
Oh,
by 12x.
this was
So that was
so
great.
good. So the guys at seriously, I mean, they're lovely chaps anyway. They came out of Rovio, and the funny thing for me was Andrew Stalbo, who was the Rovio commercial guy, and the seriously, but so he was my commercial guy when I first started out at 3 many years before. Anyway,
Yeah,
that's just an aside. Lovely, amazing guy. The thing for me about that process though was when they decided to first use rewarded ads, what they did is they decided to think about the reward part as the fundamental driver. So they use what's now very, very common, this idea of a roulette wheel, essentially. It doesn't look like a roulette wheel, but it's basically a roulette wheel. And I get to have a spin on it and get a random prize, and I can get 2 hits if I watch 2 ads. And what that did is a 35-fold increase in, no, is it 35? No, 3.5 times the session duration.
that's right. Yeah.
And that, I mean, they had something like 2.5 times the revenue off the back of so not having ads to having ads, but that was all the placements. But specifically because you could have come back, I think, every few hours to do the roulette wheel, but by being able to come back every 10 minutes or so, I think maybe a bit longer. I think later we found about 24 minutes was a good sweet spot. But the idea that you could come back and watch another ad to get another collection, people stayed playing, waiting for that 10 minutes to elapse. And honestly, the correlation, I don't know if you saw the same thing, but the correlation between revenue and session duration was really clear for us.
Yep.
At the time. So
I think there's hidden things behind that as well. If you have a longer session duration, I think the Google Play App Store algorithm looks at that and goes, okay, this is the players are sticking around in this longer. This is a good thing. More organic volume comes your way. I've got no evidence of that, but
but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Well, I'm also thinking about it. One of the key things though was Best Fiends was an amazing game. It was a really nice game.
Yeah, that helped a lot. But and thank you for doing good work on that because that got us more volume at AdCon.
I mean, this is the point though, isn't it? Back in that era, there was like 3 relatively big players, us, you, and Vongol, yeah. I mean, Chobus as well, but they were slightly different in their approach. But there was really cordial relationships between all of us. We all got on, we all knew each other, we all saw each other at the same conferences. And we all kind of had I think a fundamental principle that we wanted to make sure that the player experience was good and that the ad experience was fair. I mean, I remember a particular session where there was a whole bunch of conversation about fraud, because obviously one of the issues in advertising in general was how do you minimize fraud? And fraud can be a number of different vectors. It's not necessarily about, one ad company versus another. It's more about the implementation, the fake taps, bots, all sorts of things that could be out of our hands. And I thought one of the things I really enjoyed about that era is there seems to be a lot of us that were very much game fans rather than just being ad salespeople. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely got into that from being a game fan. I mean, I used to work at Game Studio before. I know you've had huge experience in games before. I think that's really fair. No one knew it was going to be as big as it was. I think.
No.
I think we liked what it enabled, which was, people who potentially couldn't spend in games got to enjoy more content for free.
Yeah.
They gave their time instead of their wallet, which I think, well, obviously still proven to be a good thing today with the free to play still being huge. And it had some teething issues and there's been some challenges along the way, but I think it resulted out in a really positive thing for games to grow and for more consumers to see them. So
and I think it unlocked playing to an audience that, of a scale that we would never have seen otherwise.
Exactly. Mobile is very different without this, I think, without this format. But yeah, I definitely agree that the golden age of ad networks, I like to refer back to it as, because it was just really simple, really clean, really easy for the consumer, for the publisher, for the advertiser. And I'm sure we'll touch on it. And it's not quite as easy now. It's kind of a bit more challenging.
Obviously, and obviously there's a bunch of things. So I mean, one of the things that I first noticed was we were starting to see players being less incentivized by like things like in-game currency or replays and wanting something more substantial. Did you find any trends in terms of like how players were engaging with the ads?
Yeah, our big learning, which actually came from a publisher now, and I think it was Future Play. But what they found was, so the secret sauce of doing really well on ad monetization is get as many unique first impressions as you can, right? I know you know it's Oscar, I'm not trying to teach you it, but like the more unique first impressions you get, The higher
Yeah.
CPMs you're going to guarantee
Yeah.
across the board for all the users.
Absolutely.
So what Future Play did really well, and they weren't the only, but the one I remember specifically was they gave a unique reward for engaging with a rewarded video ad. Most people before had done like, I mean, you could argue like reviving was a unique reward because you couldn't necessarily pay for that, but they did the reward they gave for watching the rewarded, for engaging with the ad was you couldn't buy it, you couldn't get it in the shop, you couldn't unlock it with progress. It was a unique thing and also a very visual thing. So I think the example
Yeah.
I would give was in Farm Away, they would make it rain, like
Yeah.
and the crops would go grow faster.
Yeah.
That was like really powerful when
Yeah.
you dangled a carrot like that to the consumer behind this ad engagement. I think that was the biggest learning we had, but that would be the hardest to convince a publisher of, because it requires game design specifically. Because if you're going to impact the game, a cosmetic's one thing, but like an economy impact is another. And I think that's where Idle Games, which is where I'm kind of live and breathe, is kind of was born out of that. And it really empowered that genre specifically with the admonization model.
No, exactly. And that team, because I think, as I recall, that team had some folks who had exposure to the ad model. And like you say, they decided, look, we're all in, we're watch to play rather than, was that the phrase? Something like watch to play.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I thought was a fantastic kind of way of looking at it. I mean, so one of the things I think I found was that you had to care. The more you cared about the thing you were going to get, the more likely you were to click on the ad. And I think the reason why I think that matters is because at that stage, because of, like I say, simpler times, or like you said, simpler times, that connection between watching the ads, that became a discovery process for the next game I might choose to play. But if it wasn't something I really wanted, then I wouldn't have the reason to keep playing as much. So this was the good, for me, this was the good ebb and flow.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very fair point. So, it's an interesting one. The end of level revive is good because the reward you're about to get, you need right away. So you can watch an ad, maybe install the app, but you're going to come back because that's why you did it in the
first place. That's why you did it.
Yeah. Whereas some of the ones that are a bit more generic, like for example, why I think the soft currency reward ones don't always work as well is because you've run out of money, you're kind of looking for things to do. You can watch an ad to earn soft currency, but it's probably not enough to earn the thing you need to do.
Almost certainly.
Yeah. So then you're at like you're almost at a churn point there. And that is where I think you can monetize quite well, but you'll have a higher risk of losing players there. And I think that's still true to this day. And we see the biggest ad placements, I believe now, at least in our games, like they are not that specific example where just get some soft currency. It's the easiest thing to do. It's the laziest thing to do as a developer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's probably the least helpful thing to do.
Least valuable, yeah. Actually, I mean, that's an interesting question. So, I mean, I have a number in my head about what the value of the thing you get from an ad should be. But do you have a kind of estimated value in your head, or what the kind of price point you would attribute to something you get from watching an ad?
So do you mean like a dollar value to the player? That's a great question. And that is probably how it should be looked at more of our models. I feel like my gut says like around 2 to 5 cents.
Spot on, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Is that where you are? I don't know if that's a bit old fashioned now because CPMs are up.
Might be a bit old fashioned, but yeah. In the old days, we used to say 2 cents.
Yeah.
But one of the things I found really interesting is the 2 cent value is very dynamic to the life stage of the player. So something that might be 2 cents for somebody who is a deeply down the rabbit hole super fan can often be much, much more valuable for the starting player. It's the same object, but it's because of its impact on my ability to get through the next play. It can be massively, massively important.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you guys did a load of analysis of the first impression to the 14th impression.
Not as much as we should have done, but yeah.
Well, we basically found like it's the 80-20 rule. 80% of the value is in the first 20% of the impressions, which is basically normally, especially back then, ad impressions per user was probably not as high as it is now on average. I mean, it definitely isn't because we used to get 30-minute boosts. Do you remember watching ads? You get like...
I do, yeah.
Now it's like, even in our games, it's like 5 minutes and you can stack it. You have to watch 6 hours to get 30 minutes now. So that's evolved quite a lot as well.
And I think it was the Clash folks that introduced the idea of the cooldown time for you unlocking your reward. And then I saw people, because I don't think they put ads into it at that stage when they introduced that model. But later we saw lots of people using ad view to speed up the opening of a reward.
Yeah.
And in those cases, the timeline. So this is like the same thing you just described. I get to play for 30 more minutes, whatever. But it was kind of reversed because you can carry on playing, but you can't unlock your rewards, and there's only so many rewards, so you can't get something else that would reward you because you filled your slots in. But if you watch an ad, then you unlock one of them. It was this kind of model, and again, this is a difficult one because some of them got some such extreme lengths, days to unlock. And to my mind, that was always Yes, I understand that might be the perceived value, but from a human behavioural point of view, can I really be bothered to wait that long? Can I really be bothered to put that much effort and money in for a payoff?
Yeah, I've always found those interesting as well. I always feel like I'd only engage in that specific placement if I have like 7 minutes to go and watching one ad's going to get me there.
Yeah.
It's not going to be, I've got 5 hours to go, I'm going to chip away at it. But there are clearly players who do that second example, right? Because we've seen it work. Probably not. It's not as widespread as some of the other placements. But I remember in terms of innovation back then, and it's predictable to mention this company's name, but people might not actually know they did this. But Supercell in heyday had a very clever. You'll know this. The integration they did, where they really made you feel valuable by getting the opportunity to watch an ad.
Absolutely.
And all they would do is in the farm, a golden ticket would land on the floor and you tap that and it would take you to the cinema and then the red curtains would open and it would show the ad. And I think you did get soft currency for that in exchange for that.
Yeah.
But it was like really glamorized the process. And I thought that was very clever. And kind of obviously the things behind the scenes there was great execution, but also very clever targeting. Because the big fear was ads would scare away payers.
Yeah.
So, and Playrix went on to do this really well as well. They'd only show ad opportunities to players who have played for a while and had no signs of they were going to pay. So it became a way to okay, well, let's still monetize that audience, which is huge, as well as our paying core. And I thought that was a real level up.
That was a level up. I think it's an interesting one because I found the other type of leveling up where you do the opposite, where you use the ad to express the value of the thing that you would then sell in a bundle, and then you could incorporate in a sort of VIP package. I found that that's a really useful way, but it's a difficult one because, especially in the era where ads have now become a lot more of an obstacle to your next session, next playthrough. But the principle of being able to express value. Probably the best example of this actually was a little game called a little tiny game, didn't make huge amounts of money, but it did all right, called Let's Go Rocket by Cobra Mobile. So what they did is every third playthrough, you would get an option to watch an ad to get a reskin. Okay. So the reskin would be, because it was a very simple game. It was one of those games where you were kind of tapping to keep your ball bouncing up. But the way the skins worked, you were either in Asteroids World or you're in a kind of Jimmy Neutron style 3D kind of glorious thing, or it would look like you were playing a flat plane 2D racing game, all just through the skins. And the skins were delightful. Didn't change the gameplay at all, but they felt different. And so what they did is you watch the ad to get presented with the skin, which you could then use for 3 goes. And at the end of the 3 goes, you could buy it at half price. This is the only time you're going to get that discount.
Okay, interesting. I never heard that.
It's a really remarkable model. I mean, it's not on itself going to save the commercial fortunes of a game. The game's going to be good, all the other stuff we've said. But to me, it demonstrated, and it wasn't the only example, it's just the most, the guy, Mark, actually, who made it happened to be a mate of mine, so I'm biased anyway. But but it was more that I thought it was the most clean example of that process.
Yeah, that's really nice. I remember we tried building a product, and I think every network went through this on Rewarded Video, where you could have in-app purchase promo ads run in your waterfall, basically. So if you didn't have a advertiser willing to pay high enough for the impression, why not use a show off on the purchases in your? But it never really worked for us. I don't know if you guys ever saw scale.
No, we didn't see it work particularly. I mean, it worked better for cross promotion rather than in game. I think because the ability to essentially foreshadow why you should buy something in that game is much cleaner if it's integrated into the flow of play, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think if you create this forced moment, you've lost the panache, the desirability of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it needs to be much more integrated than just kind of a plonk pad in like
Exactly.
in a zone you don't expect it.
However, so was there any? I mean, we talked a lot about kind of some of the lessons we've learned back in the day from the being in the kind of like advertising platform perspective. Are there other lessons that you learned during that era that you think people would find useful to apply to the way they build their games now?
Oh, I guess so. So I started my game studio when I was at Ad Colony. So that
Mm.
was I had a very cool boss who let me set up a studio on the side, like a little
Yeah.
side hustle, evenings and weekend thing. And our first game was a casual. Oh, sorry, was a hyper casual game. Before we realized what hyper casual was, it was like
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember Paper Toss, Oscar. You may
I
have
very much do.
Yeah, so we basically tried to turn paper. So the idea of that game for your listeners was you flick a paper ball into a bin and you just swipe up the screen to do it.
Yeah.
So we basically took that mechanic and made crossbar challenge, which is like try and
Yeah.
kick a ball at a crossbar. And big learning there, which isn't going to be helpful to anyone, is that Americans did not know what a crossbar was, so it didn't work in the US. But in Europe, it did quite well. And that was we started to do some creative things with rewarded video there because we didn't know how to do an app purchase. Like it was beyond us. We knew less than 1% of players would do it. So but we knew almost 100% of players could at least watch a rewarded video. So we were trying to do some innovation back then. And that was kind of like pack openings. So you could open a pack and unlock cards and upgrade it, almost like the Clash Royale. But instead of trying to IEP it, it was trying to rewarded video monetize it. That didn't work as well because the number of impressions you need per user wasn't hit with that method. One of the things I think is still true today, which was true back then, is the first impression is super important, trying to get that unique first, but obviously repeated impressions is key. And that's something we focused on over the years. So today, our new game we just launched, Idle Mine, it has 13 impressions per user per day on average. So that when we go back to what we were making in 2016 with those kind of weaker repetition placements was like 1 or 2, if even. And that's the difference between a profitable game and not.
It's interesting you say that because there were some games that we had that were getting up to 30 ad impressions per user.
Yeah, that's big numbers.
That's crazy. That was crazy. Yeah. I mean, these were particular games that happen to have fluidity, and those are all rewarded. I mean, it would never have worked with interstitials. It would have killed play. In fact, I was doing some game design consultancy for somebody at the time because I was part-time Unity, part-time consultant. I was very, very lucky. Amazing era. Probably the best era I've ever had. I just couldn't stop them from wanting to put in every possible place for interstitial. I kept saying, don't do it. And it killed the game. Absolutely killed it stone dead because, yes, you can have large number of impressions. And obviously 30 is an extreme number. 6 is probably more common. 13, fab. But they've got to be meaningful and useful. So you're saying about 13, but and that's in a modern game. So even with the context of a minute and a half break out of the game before coming back, they're still getting that number.
Yeah, and that's just rewarded video. So there's no interstitials in there. And that's one thing we were talking about internally as a studio is the next, the easiest way to monetize more. Obviously, A/B test everything. Like we do that. But when we added interstitials to our first game, Bitcoin Miner, it increased the revenue by 20%. Like it was very, okay, this makes sense. Retention dips a little bit, but nowhere near as much as the LTV uplift. So it's okay, it's a trade-off. We will do that. And that had about 8 impressions per day, just for context. I think it's about 10 with interstitials. So the 20% uplift is quite clear where that came from. But now with Idle Mine, it's already got 13. And our opinion is, our feeling is, well, why, like, how much more do we want to go? Because 13 impressions on average per user is a lot, right? And we know the value of the 13th impression is already rock bottom compared to the value of the first.
Of course it is.
So our decision is like, well, let's just keep it clean. Like, let's not interrupt the play session. Let's not risk any downward in retention anyway. There might be a slight uplift to LTV, and it's something we probably should test, but the call to do it is nowhere near as good. So that's quite an interesting learning for us recently, is that you can get that high without interstitials. We've never been anywhere near that kind of level without it.
No. But I think it's fascinating, particularly because you're stating something I think incredibly important. I'm not sure people are focusing enough on, and that's LTV. How are you calculating LTV though?
So when we look at LTV, we have quite a few revenue streams on.
Actually, we should just say, just in case for the record, LTV is lifetime value, and there are various ways of calculating, which is why I'm asking the question. Sorry, go for it, Paul.
So, okay, you're going to ask me the actual formula maybe, but how I'll just explain. So our setup, we've spent
Yeah,
a long time building our own data stack. So
yeah,
everything funnels through and measurement partner, Adjust, AppsFire,
yeah,
Singular, other good ones available.
yeah,
They funnel through into all the data funnels through into there. And then we split that cohort up A, B, C, D, like see
yeah,
what an A/B test would look like. And we literally measure LTV as the God metric, as we all know, to see
yeah,
was it a good decision or not. And we look at it at daily intervals. So right now, because our games are more established and they're kind of live breathing products, Bitcoin One is 2 years old, we look at like day 30 beyond.
yeah.
Whereas
So
we
you're
used
looking at basically day 30 LTV.
basically, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's one of our biggest levers, which is a problem because it
Mm.
takes so long to get to that point with a sizable cohort.
Well, the interesting one for me is when you get, and Will Luton uses the term terminal velocity. I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of that term, but the idea that you often have a cohort of players who will stay playing and they won't stop playing.
Yep.
And getting to that point where you get an audience that has that, great, that's amazing. You've made something. But what I found really interesting about that mindset is I wonder if day 30 LTV is enough and whether day 60, day 90 matters, because to me it's a little bit like compound interest. If you have these even longer term players, and I don't want to lose those even longer term players because they get ad fatigue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, one of our biggest purchases in our game, well, our biggest purchase in our game is remove ads.
Yeah.
So like that's that.
Interesting.
So that in itself says a lot about like our LTV curve
Ah.
because we don't have a forever spending cohort of a big percentage of a forever spending cohort of users.
Yeah.
So if they remove ads, it's and our game rewards players with Bitcoin. So it's like it's
Yeah.
in itself.
Exactly.
We have a sink as well as needing to. So it is really interesting. And we do your point around having a later LTV. Ideal in an ideal world, we definitely optimize to a later LTV day than we currently do. That's why we have invested in like machine learning, and this is another evolution on again, right? Machine learning.
Oh yes.
I mean, which is effectively AI, but we have someone who models out what it will look like at day 120 based on what we've seen so far. That's not like new. Other studios are doing that, and those models aren't always perfect, but they do kind of give a good trend. So that's how we've tried to bring that window closer.
Because
the reality is
part, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, because the challenge is if you optimize towards a day 120 window, you barely launch any features ever.
Yeah,
like it's so. Yeah, and I was listening to the 20 VC podcast, not to plug another podcast on your podcast, really bad.
It's fine. It's all good.
But the chief growth officer of Revolut was talking, and his kind of thing was a good product owner should know if a feature's good and shouldn't need to A/B test it. And he's ex-King, and I was kind of like, I don't think that's exactly I simplified that and said it aggressively.
Yeah.
But that was kind of and I think there's some truth to that.
Oh yeah, I agree.
But because you want to,
I want data.
Especially as founders, right? You want to be confident in every decision you make as much as you can, and that data does give you that, not fully because things can change, but it gives you the pat on the back you kind of need to make the decision sometimes.
I do have sympathy for it. I mean, I spent a lot of time as a product owner where someone has to make a call to do something. I'm going to make that call and I'm going to let it, I'm going to ride on that call. And if the buck stops with me, if that was the wrong call, I'm going to try to facilitate that call to be as right as possible with whatever data is available. But I've also got instincts. I've also got experience. I'm going to bring that to bear, and I'm going to listen to other people, not just in the company, to make sure I'm not completely in an echo chamber.
Yep.
But I'm going to test the results of it. And to me, this is the juxtaposition, which is like, if we consider every decision we make as a hypothesis, yes, we can A/B test. But if we can't A/B test for some reason, quite often when we take a small game, an indie game, they don't have the budget to do an A/B test. Not really.
Mm-hmm. Never been there.
And I'm all right spending £150 on a video ad, no variation of ad, no variation of target audience, and just see what happens, because I know I'm going to be doing it again.
Exactly. And I think that's, so just for context, like Fumb has been a very small studio in terms of like turnover until this year. Like we've grown 10x in the last year, and that's
congratulations.
that's obviously very, very fortunate,
especially in this current climate.
Yeah, exactly. So like we're very lucky in that sense, and I completely understand to your listeners who run indie studios or work at indie studios. And I think the thing that we found there was go with your gut more than wait for
Mm.
data, because you're in this industry for a reason. You love what you do. That means you're naturally probably better than someone who doesn't love what they do at it.
Yeah,
And that's what we did, because we couldn't afford to get a cohort, to get 10,000 users in an A and a B group in the US isn't realistic without loads
yeah,
of organic volume already, unless you're paying a lot for it. So
yeah,
now we can do ABCD tests because we have the DAU to do it,
yeah,
but we just had to go with gut more often than not in most
yeah,
cases. And the thing I like to refer to, my co-founder showed me this a few years ago, which is like Jeff Bezos's decision tree triangle square thing, which is like, is it reversible, the decision you're about to make? If it
yeah,
is, go nuts, go for it, like experiment. If it's not reversible, then be cautioned, then try and get data on it. And most of the decisions we make are reversible in designing free to play games, like, because you can roll things back, you can remove things from a player and risk churn, but for the greater good, if it saves the project, always worth doing.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's it. I mean, for my mind, it's always the start with what is the player experience going to be like, and then the decisions become easier. If you're focused on player value, you're focused on players having a good time. Well, engagement equals retention, and retention equals revenue.
Yep.
At the end of the day. So,
Exactly. Agree.
I'm going to kind of pursue this. So let's talk about the specific requirements. I mean, you're obviously doing idle type games, and you've got Bitcoin flavored stuff as well. But I mean, I'm going to focus more on the game element of it, particularly. We can talk about blockchain another time, I'm sure. But the thing I'm interested to hear is what are the specific elements about kind of the balance of the experience. So obviously, let's forget about the money side for a moment. Let's think about the flow of game. So I'm trying to explore the impact of game balance and economy design in game, like resources and stuff like that. But then how that then extrapolates out into monetization. That's kind of where I'm exploring in the book. So from your point of view, if we go down to pure design elements, how do you look at balancing the experience for an idle game?
Well, great question. And my game designer shouldn't listen to this because he might he might be like, Paul doesn't know what he's on about. So from our perspective, the economy, running a game economy is incredibly hard.
Mm.
And that's why I'm anti Web3 token stuff, because like now you're running a liquid economy as well as your in-game
Yeah,
economy. That's
exactly.
right for disaster. So I put that aside. But because
Yeah.
running a game economy is very, very challenging. Obviously, within that closed economy, you can have levers and tweak things so you can find the balances. The way we look at it is purely basically through retention. Like obviously, we optimize towards retention because that is a leading indicator of LTV. This is probably not science. Well, it's not science. But what we found is gut often wins. When we built our idle games, we were playing them, and we didn't have smart models or Excel spreadsheets that would go, okay, well, if I play for 7 hours, we literally just played them and built them. It's like, okay, well, after a 30-minute session, my first session, I feel like I would want this experience and see that hanging in the future that I can get. Oh, and I know it's only 10 minutes away. So I'll come back tomorrow. That kind of very touch and feel like vibes, not science at all. And then we evolved as a company and got like a data team and even machine learning. And I'm not going to say across the whole board it's not made an impact, but gut is often right, what we found. Doing it that way, at least for the early game, which arguably is the most important for retention, right? It really works that way. It helps a lot that me and my co-founder and a lot of the team love these types of games. So we play all of them and know and feel what feels good and what doesn't feel quite right. So we could apply that knowledge. So playing games is always good. But there has been a few instances where on the late game, when we've used like LTV modeling to say, okay, well, what if we move this lever of the economy? And it could be a simple example of the cost to upgrade a manager in our mining game. How much is it? We actually have just done a run a test on this month, and it's increased LTV by like 10%.
Oh, wow.
So I'm kind of like early game, go with gut, late game, because the whales, that's where they are. And we don't have we're not whales as players. We don't know what will convince someone to depart with their cash. That's where it's really interesting, I think, to tweak the variables with some smarter intelligence than gut.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm on a bit of a mission to try and remove the word whale from game design, but that's because I think it's great for gambling. But super fans, same principle, really.
Super fans,
whatever you call it.
I'm used to that terminology. Obviously, it's. I agree. It's not the best. It doesn't. It's not the most complimentary.
Well, it's more a case that I think that new people coming in might confuse gambling structures with game structures, and I think whales have a particular function, very identifiable, very data driven. Whereas I think it's more of a fan related thing. And the thing for me, again, I'll bring it back to what you've just said, but the thing for me is I think fascinating is dedicated people have more in common than necessarily how much they spend.
Yep, for sure.
And I think that's why I like the word superfan better, because a superfan willing to spend $1 a month with me probably has very similar behavior to somebody who's willing to spend $1,000 a month with me.
Yep.
But we need to make them both feel valued and valuable in the process.
Yeah, they both have incredible value. Like, our super fans run our Discord server. Like,
Yeah.
we've got 200,000 people in there because of these people. Do you know what I mean? They
Because
spread
of
the
those
word on
people.
Reddit. Their K factor is incredible. That's probably
Yeah.
bigger than high spender.
Way bigger than their actual. But again, that's the thing for me is, again, knowing the data of their behavior allows you to find the trend. So if you happen to have a game that happens to have somebody who is more like a traditional gambling whale, great, fine. I'm happy with that. That's all makes sense. If that's the way that person plays, and by that I would mean they probably have a large amount of money, they have a certain amount they're going to spend, and then that's it, they're going to go. And that's okay. That's their choice. If you have somebody who's going to keep playing, they're probably more long-term valuable for all the reasons you said in terms of the thing. But I think going back to basics, and we're not going to get them there unless we've established their journey, their onboarding journey in. And I think you're absolutely right that there's nothing better than understanding the feel of the play to get that balance right. I mean, I try and do all sorts of things with maths and Monte Carlo simulations or whatever else, and all theoretical things. But I think the same thing happens with board game design. Until you sit and play it and play test the thing, it's all hypothesis.
Yeah, because you see all the variables when you're playing it yourself, but when you look in the data, there's a variable missing. There's something missing, right? The environment's different. There's loads of different things that could happen. And I've spoken to other studios that run idle games, and they've said similar things. Like, they've done 100 iterations of their economy, and the best one is the first one still. And you can burn time on this still. I'm not saying don't test economies, because that does help and it can move retention. We've seen it ourselves, but also don't feel burnt out if you can't improve what you've got. You might just be very good at what you do.
No, exactly. And I think this is the thing is, there's lots of different games, so lots of different challenges they face. And I think what I'm trying to do with bringing this into kind of looking at balance, looking at the experiences and how you add things to an established base, does have a lot of theoretical models that we can play with. But at the end of the day, we've got to check those models against what players actually enjoy. And I think one of the things that comes across, it's just a bit like random number generators. How often a random number generator that's truly random doesn't feel random.
Yeah, 100%. We get that complaint all the time.
Yeah. So pseudo random is always better than actual random. And I think similarly, a pseudo managed economy can often be better, at least initially. I do chuck in a few techniques, so like I'll have an anchor currency so that I can have multiple things that are going on, resource or whatever, but my anchor currency can only be obtained through play, so I can prevent the excesses of somebody spending too much money in one place or too little money there, or not watching an ad, or even just spending too much time grinding in one particular aspect of play. And it just sort of takes the complexity off when you've got a relatively complex world.
Yep. Yeah, agree. Yeah, I think our lead game designer would love to chat to you about all that stuff.
Well, that's why I wrote the book.
Go, you'll read the book.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, genuinely, I'm always happy to do that anyway, by the way, of course. So I'm going to think a little bit before we kind of go on to some of the wider kind of industry things. So we're kind of nearly at time, but with the things like the removal of IDFA back in the day, obviously post COVID, that seems to me to have come back to haunt us a little bit. The privacy issues, all those kind of things have obviously had an impact on the way ads operate. And we talked earlier about how some of the formatting of the way the ad experiences operate have changed, I think, as an adaptation by the ad companies to deal with the depressed market in that space. That's my opinion. Do you feel the same way? How has it affected the way that you think about your game elements? And it seems like you're actually getting, you're doing pretty well, unlike a lot of people. But how has it affected the way you think about the ads use?
Well, pre-pandemic and during the pandemic, Fun Games was not really any like it was not profitable. It was,
Mm.
it was like 10 people. We had some games, but wasn't covering its cost. So we never had like a before and after comparison
Yeah,
that
fair.
fair to look at. Obviously, my background was in ad space, so I was very aware of what was happening, what was going on. From my like zooming out lens of what's happened is Android's become very, very important.
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
we grew on Android first, and now we're 50-50 on our revenue, but it was 95% Android for 2020, 2021, 2022. iOS has really only come alive in the last like 1 year to 18
Yeah.
months. And I think that is indicative of that change because
Mm.
most of
Yeah,
our
yeah.
game revenue was ad revenue at
Mm.
first. We've also been aware of the changes, so have one of the leading factors of our decision to try and move to, 50% IAP, 50% ad revenue. So it's had a healthy impact on us in that kind of it forced our hand that way, I would
Mm.
say.
Mm.
So yeah, I think about 60%, 65% of our revenue is ads and the rest is IAP at the moment. So
Mm.
we're not there yet, but we're moving towards that
Yeah.
because it feels a healthier place to be.
Yeah, I always felt that 40% ads and 60% IAP/subscription style revenue was a safer place to be.
Yep.
But that was such variability. I mean, I've seen amazing games doing amazingly, and they're 80% ad revenue still. It does vary. Games are different. Yeah,
Yeah. The reason why I quite like having a bit more flexibility on the ad side, so having it slightly more ads, is because there are so many good ad partners.
yeah, yeah.
But on the IAP side, there's two partners really, like Google and Apple.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've gone through an Apple rejection in your time, Oscar, of a build.
I don't know what you mean. I couldn't possibly comment on the grounds it might incriminate me. Yeah. Actually, touch wood, I've been pretty lucky so far. I actually managed to get the first blockchain game approved by Apple.
Hey, that's a win.
Yeah, that was a win. That was didn't do very well as a game, but the design was approved because of the way we approached it.
Yeah, and I'm not even referring to like it's just
Oh yeah, no, I would just use that as an example of like I performed a miracle. I think.
So yeah, so the point was I the ad partners, one goes down, there's someone's going to fill its place.
Yeah.
Whereas on the platform side,
Yeah.
if one has a bad day or goes down, which is obviously super rare, but has happened, no one's going to fill that place on
No one's going to fill it.
platforms. That's why I've always been a bit more comfortable with having ads diversified as the majority.
I think that's valid.
Yeah, but it's not really a real problem that anyone should have, I don't think.
No, and we'll have to see what happens with the EU cases and whether we actually see, genuine competitive app store elements coming in. I'm sure folks like Excel are sitting in the background wanting to step in and change the world. I think there'll be other players as well. It'd be interesting to see how that space works out. So last question really is like, so in terms of, if you were to give one piece of advice for studios wanting to think about how to basically think about the economy of their game, the balancing of the game, and how that then affects monetization, what would that advice be?
Good question. My advice would be, I don't think you should necessarily have ad monetization front of mind when you're designing your economy, as that might sound a bit surprising, but it can't be the last thing either. The ad monetization enhances the economy and it enhances it for every player. Because either a player is going to remove ads and gets the boost anyway, or they're going to watch the ads and get the boost. Yeah. So I think it needs to be as a and it goes back to the gut thing. If you have to watch ads to play the game and get any enjoyment in the first session, that's too hard. That's far too aggressive.
Agreed.
But it's okay to ask a user to engage with ad content to help fund the project. So I know there's a balance there that you have to find a sweet spot of. The thing I would advise as well as like an extra thing specifically to ad monetization in the economy is think about chaining. And what I mean by that is chaining ads. So this is all optional. So not interstitial, but some players, the eVenture guys did this really well, I think. And there's other examples in idle games specifically, but also that's coming into other genres of games, is you can open up game enhancing opportunities by sequentially watching ads. And I don't mean like 30 seconds followed by 30 seconds followed by 30 seconds or 60 seconds. I mean like, okay, that boost is now active. this has enabled this to happen. And you
Yeah.
can do this, or you can super boost this. And it's
Yes.
kind of like little nudges to say, there's little nudges to make it a more impactful
Nudges to super
session.
boost. That's interesting. I like that. I've not seen that technique used. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, I do like it. I don't think it's been explored enough yet, and we're trying to explore it a bit more. But chaining ads is really impactful. So the example in eVenture is you come into the game and you can get a super helper to join and help you out if you watch. I think you get them for free. Then you can watch the ads to keep them, and then but then also you want to times 2 all of your game economy whilst you're playing. So you watch that one. Oh, and then that knocks and it's that kind of thing where it's just like, no, I'm gonna supercharge this session, and I think that's really powerful. And as a player, I love that. Because I'm like, okay, I'm making excellent use of my time here.
Yeah, I love it, but I would argue I'd want to have a cooldown on the specific individual parts of that chain that got me there in the first place, so that it doesn't feel like a tax.
Go on. What do you mean?
So what I mean by that is when you had to double your rewards watching had to double your rewards. Okay, if you had it every single time, I found that created a lot of fatigue. In fact, actually, I got a lot less revenue than if I made it so you could only do that once every 24 months.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So you limit the ability to do it.
Yeah. So it then becomes a choice to do it then, as opposed to doing it later.
So it's presented as an opportunity, basically.
It's an opportunity, yeah. And I think that difference of mindset, where it's a joker card to play, makes it really powerful, makes it really enjoyable, and less like the game is cheating you of your real value you should be getting, if you get my drift.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I think I can give you evidence that works in our games, because one of our best ad placements is we actually there's like a random reward that will float across the screen. You watch that and it gives you a free reward, but you can super boost that reward by watching an ad. So you earn 100 coins, get 1,000 by watching an ad. And that is like, if you close it, it's gone. And that comes whatever, like every 5 minutes or so. So it's like, oh, I can grab that. But it does fall into the chaining because, well, actually that is 1,000 because I times 2 down here. So it's like, everything kind of invests in its chain in the next sequence, I guess.
You're making a game of the choice to use the video ad, which I think is fascinating. I've got one last supplemental question for you, which has occurred to me. We're talking a lot about mobile. Well, a lot of what we've done has been mobile. And obviously the thing I think we both think has really radically changed mobile's fortunes is the use of a video ad. And I think we've demonstrated that video ads can be a force for good. Do you think we'll ever see that in PC?
In PC?
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm out of my comfort zone here. My opinion is a mobile session and a PC session or a console session is very, very different. There is prerequisites that are built in already to what those sessions look like, and they've evolved their own separate trees. I'd say I don't see it happening anytime soon, but could quite easily be surprised when I think about how much free content is coming out on consoles now. It wouldn't surprise me. I know in-game ads are coming in.
Yeah, that's happening. Yeah, I mean, not as much as in-game ads requires the context of the game to work.
Yeah, completely, which limits the impact of it as a massive market. But I'm trying to think if I was playing a game, would I do it? And I think it's too premium for that right now.
Yeah.
Still, to go against everything I've said of ads not being ads can be premium and being premium products. I think that's accepted on mobile, but not elsewhere yet.
I think currently the barriers to get you to be playing on PC already shrink the addressable audience, and therefore the attitudes of that addressable audience are currently not friendly to that. I think it could be done, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. I think it could be really good for some games, but I think with the current, what I call poor behavior, as we've been describing, of the extending the time on the ad, I think that that set back the possibility a long way.
Oh, definitely.
Because the loss of trust. To me, this is the thing, is I think good ads work well when we trust the ad supplier and the game. But when that trust is breached, we blame the game.
Oh, yeah. Reviews show that.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Paul, thank you so much. That's been fantastic. Really pleased. Where can people get hold of you and find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm very open on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect, send me messages, ask me questions if there are any, or I'm happy to help. I got loads of help when I was setting up a studio, so I always like to try and help people as well if they need it. LinkedIn is best, Twitter, Paul West, but the L's are 1 because Paul West was taken. So LinkedIn's probably best.
Paul, thank you so much for that.
Cheers, Oscar. Pleasure.